Hey guys, CB Super. Today I'm going to show you how to make this little Instagram type ad. It doesn't have to be used for Instagram, it can be used for pretty much any social media. It's pretty easy to do. I'm going to show you guys how to do this. It can either be with using video or you can use a photo. We have a couple little product photography shots that we're going to go ahead and steal, and we're just going to cut them out from the background using masking technique. We're going to throw in a little bit of watermarking up here and also just show you how to add this text. Also going to show you how you can dissolve from one product into the next product. We're also going to show how to make these little reflections down here. A lot of things going on this one. It's going to be fairly easy, but you will need to follow pretty much step by step if you are not familiar with Fusion. If you are familiar with Fusion, you should be able to go pretty quickly, as most of these techniques are going to be fairly straightforward and pretty easy to follow. First thing we need to do is let's go ahead and just jump into building a new composition. I'm going to take this Fusion comp, just going to move it off to the side, and we're going to actually create a new Fusion comp. So I'm going to just over here in this timeline, I'm going to right click, come down to new Fusion composition, left click. 5 seconds should be fine. If you want yours to be longer, that's fine. You just click right in here. Let's say you want it to be 10 seconds long. You just 10 seconds. You're really gonna have to go and check out exactly what format you're looking to do. Are you doing it in stories, or are you doing it just regular on the Instagram page? Are you doing it on Instagram TV? All of those formats take a slightly different amount of time duration you can use, so just keep that in mind when you're making your actual ad. Go ahead and hit create. It's gonna drop down this Fusion composition. I'm gonna take this Fusion comp and I'm just gonna drop it into video 1 slot on my timeline. All right, so you'll notice that mine is already set up for the specific resolution that I'm looking to do. If you want to change the resolution, because yours is probably 1920 by 1080 or whatever resolution you last used it in, you're going to need to come over here, over on this little cog here, and you're going to change it up here where it says custom. So it might be set to, I don't know, like 1920 by 1080 or 1998 or something. You're just going to want to come all the way up here, click on custom. And then it depends, again, on what type of format you're going to be using. For this specific one, I'm going to go ahead and do 1080 by 1080, and that's going to give me a perfect square. All you got to do is hit save, and you'll notice now my composition is perfect square. Now, if you wanted yours to be in the story format, then obviously 1080 by 1920 or 1920 by 1080, depending on if it's height or width. You want the height to actually be 1920 by 1080. All right, let's go ahead and jump over to Fusion. You'll notice I have a nice square composition here. I already have media uploaded here. If you're curious on how to actually add media to the media pool, all you gotta do is right click, go to import media, left click on that, find wherever it is on your computer. If you leave it on your desktop, go to your desktop, double click on it, and it's gonna go ahead and load it in here. Now I don't actually need that one, so I'm gonna delete it. But if you're looking for it, that's how you do it. Okay, so now that we're inside of Fusion, let's go ahead and let's start prepping our actual ad. Here you can see the timeline here. We've got from 0 to 239, and so all that is it's essentially 240 frames that we're going to be working in. Now I might not be using all of those frames. I may only use maybe the first half of those frames, but it's just something to be aware of, that you're going to have access to all of those frames. So the media that you bring in, you may want to consider, is it going to be a freeze frame? Is it going to be an image, a picture, or what? So we're going to be using a combination of video and pictures in this specific instance, but that's just something you need to take into consideration. Now, I'm going to go ahead and bring down my first background image, which is going to be this video clip. And if we look at this video clip, you can see what it is. It's just a scuba diving clip, and the actual portion that I want to use is actually this very first part where they're just kind of jumping into the water. I think it looks pretty cool, and then if it goes a little bit further, that's fine as well. Just a nice little fun vacation-y action shot. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this media and I'm just going to drop it onto my background, and you'll see what happens. And let's go ahead and view this media out by dragging it up and dropping it in. You'll notice that the size difference is a little off, and that's because this original clip is different resolution than the actual image. If we click on this, you can see it's 1280 by 720, which means the actual video image is smaller than our 1080 by 1080. That's okay, because we're only going to be using a portion of it, and we're also going to be blocking off the bottom part with a banner. So I need to be able to move this around and resize it. So to do that, I'm going to bring in a transform node. So with the media selected, I'm going to come up here to the hotbar, and you'll notice that this one over here with the little arrows going around in the circle, that's the transform. I'm going to go ahead and left click on that, and with my cursor, I already clicked on this transform node. You notice that it gives me these little arrows, and I can take these arrows and I can move it around. I can also come over here and I can resize it. So over in the inspector, if you don't see the inspector, just click on the inspector and it'll pop up. Now I can resize it, and for this specific image, I kind of want them over on the right-hand side a little bit more. And that's so when they drop off here, I'll still be able to see my product image over here on the left, and I'll be able to see the people over here on the right. And so that's pretty important when we're talking about composition. Even though it's just a small ad that's going to be going on Instagram, you're still going to want to pay attention to the actual composition of your ad. You're always going to want to be able to see whatever it is that you're putting inside of there, and everybody should have like their own little space. And of course, there's a whole lot more when it comes to composition. In fact, there's entire 1,000-page books on just composition alone. We're not really going to go over that in this video. So here we go. We have our video set. Looks pretty good. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drop in the banner that's going to go on the bottom here. And to do that, I'm actually just going to drag in a background node. So I'm going to drag this background node in over here, and I'm going to color this background white. So you can actually see over here in the basic colors, just left click on white, hit OK. I want to merge this on. Now to merge this in, I can either bring in a merge node, or I can just take the output of the background and I can drop it on the output of this merge node. And you'll notice that it's going to merge it onto this yellow pipeline. The yellow pipeline is essentially the overall output video, which is outputted over here on the media out. Right now we can see it's obviously too big. I can resize this background using a transform node, but the easiest way to do this is just to bring in a rectangle node. Now, where do you want to bring that rectangle node in? I'm actually going to have it on top of this background. So I'm going to click on the background node, and then I'm going to click on the rectangle mask, and it's going to create an actual mask. Now I can control this rectangle just by grabbing the sides here. I can pull it out, and then I can drop this down a bit so it covers just wherever I want my background to be. I can go ahead and off click there, and now you'll see that I can still see the video back there. I can also see this white banner. We're going to have some text. We're also going to use this as a display point for our actual bottles of wine. All right, so now we've got our banner, we've got our background video. Let's go ahead and bring in some product photography. Now, ideally, when you're creating your product photography, your photography will already be done, maybe even cut out in a PNG so that you won't have to do much work. But the images that I brought over are pretty much worst case scenario. We're going to go ahead and bring in 2 images here, and both these images are different varying sizes. You can see that this one is 1920 by 1277. I'm just going to cut out this single bottle of wine, and then we also have this other bottle of wine, which is a really different image size, 1343 by 1920. I'm just going to cut this out as well. Now we're just going to be using a regular masking technique where we make a polygon mask and it just goes all the way around our image, and then we're going to resize those, and then we're going to do a little thing where we're actually going to dissolve one into the other. We're going to add some reflections. We're going to do a little bit to make it a little bit look nicer, but essentially this portion can be as difficult as you want it to be or as easy as you want it to be by just bringing in a PNG where everything is already cut out. So let's go ahead and start with this one right here. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out this bottle of wine over here on the right. And to do that, I'm going to click on that media, and I'm also going to click on this polygon mask tool. Now by default, you'll see everything goes away, and that's because I haven't actually created any points, but I actually want to invert it over here in the right. Once I click on that little invert, now we can actually see what we're going to be masking out. Now I'm going to hold down Command or Control, and I'm just going to zoom in just a little bit over here, and I'm going to start at the top. Now, the more time you spend on it, the better this is going to look. I'm probably not going to spend quite as much time. I'm just going to start putting down some points here, and I'm just going to do a rough mask, and I'm just using my mouse. You could also use a Wacom tablet or a pen. There's also a bunch of other masking techniques we could be using. We could also use some keying techniques to try and just key out the background. But for the sake of time, I'm just going to do a fairly rough mask job here, and I'm going to be doing this inside of the white just so I don't accidentally get any of that white, and I'll give it a little bit of softness a little bit later, and that'll just make it a little bit easier. I can also use my scroll wheel here just to drive this down just a little bit more. And again, this part right here, this could take you much longer. It's only going to take me just a couple minutes because I'm doing it rather quickly. But you're going to want to take a little bit more time and make sure it's a little bit more perfect than what I'm doing here. All right, and if you make a mistake, you can just grab that actual point and you can move it a little bit. You can also delete points, and once you complete it, you'll notice that it cut it out. Now obviously we don't want the background, we actually want the bottle. So I want to come back over here and I want to re-invert it again, and then I can click off there and I can kind of take a look at my bottle. The bottle looks okay, doesn't look too bad. I'm going to hold down Command and Control, and I'm going to give it just a little bit of soft edge, and that just takes a little bit of the sharpness off that edge, and it makes it look a little bit more like an actual item and not something that you cut out digitally, which we did. All right, so now we have these two items. We take a look at it by itself. You'll notice that it is still in this crazy 1920 by 1277. Now we could resize this, but instead of resizing it, I'm actually going to hit Shift Space. I'm going to type in the word crop, and I want to crop it because I'm going to crop it to be the size of my composition. And then I'm going to resize it. So I actually want to size it before the crop. So after this media in, I'm going to go ahead and drop down another transform node. And I'm going to take this transform node and I'm going to move the item over. And I want to move the item over to right around the center of this composition, and I want to bring it down to the bottom like so. What that's going to do is that's going to allow me to have both my items be in roughly the same area, so when they start to dissolve into each other, it'll make a little bit more sense and it won't be so jarring. And we can play around with the exact position of this in a little bit. Let's go ahead and work on the second piece of media here. The second item is going to be this bottle here. Let's go ahead and do the exact same process. So I'm going to, again, click on the polygon mask. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to invert it. And then I'm just going to start working on the bottle top, getting as close as you need to. And I might move just a little bit faster on this one than I did on the last one. Again, just using my scroll wheel to move down here. And honestly, like, the less points you have, usually the more smooth your actual mask is going to be. So at some point I might want to zoom out a little bit. And you can also move these tangent handles to make it even smoother. Again, I'll let you guys do that if you guys are interested. I also have other videos on masking if you're interested, just showing more techniques and more tools you can use to help you mask. Those will be maybe in the description if I remember by the time we're done here. As we get to the bottom, you'll notice that there is actually a reflection here. That's great. We're not going to use their reflection. We're going to be making our own because I want my reflection to be consistent with the other bottle that we're going to be using. Again, this part can be very tedious, as all rotoscoping can be. You'll notice I'm going a little bit inside of the actual edge. And that's just because once I invert this, I can actually give it a little bit of soft edge, and that'll make it a little smoother. You'll notice I actually have a little bit of white up here. So I'm just going to bring this in just a little bit, maybe delete some of those points just by hitting the delete key. Let's take a look at it. Click off. You can see I have a little bit of white here. Click back on the polygon. I'm just going to bring this in a bit. You can also select these and hit Shift S, and that will smooth those out if you find that they are a little bit too jagged. And let's go ahead and delete some of those points. Push it in just a little bit, something like that. That looks a little better. That looks a little bit better. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at it. Cool, looks good. Again, let's go ahead and make a transform node, and then Shift Space. We'll add a crop node again. Let's take a look at the after crop. And with the transform node this time, you can see that our bottle is much bigger than the original size. So I'm going to go ahead and size this bottle down a bit. And I'm just going to bring it back into the center of this composition. And I'm actually going to size it up a little bit just so it pretty much fills this entire comp. And that's just so we can really make it easy to, I don't know, match up to this other side. So let's go ahead and do the same with this one. So we're going to size this up just a little bit and then move it over. And all right, now we need to merge these together just to see if they're roughly in the right area. But instead of using a merge, what I'm going to use is a dissolve. So Shift Space, type in dissolve. And we're just going to use a dissolve node. I'm going to drop one of these into the background and then the other side into the foreground. Now let's take a look. You're only going to see one side at a time. And so we just want to make sure that when these two dissolve, they are fairly close to each other. So they're not really matched up just yet. So let's go ahead and move it over just a little bit so they match up just about perfectly. So right around there looks good. Now when they dissolve, they seem to kind of just dissolve into each other. That's going to work. Let's go ahead and move this entire thing up just a little bit. And let's merge this into our composition now by taking the output of the dissolve and dropping it into the output of this merge node. It creates a new merge node. And now we can see that we now have our product in place. Obviously, it's a little bit big. So underneath the dissolve, let's go ahead and add a transform node. And now this transform node is the one that we're going to click on, and we're going to be using this to move our product around. And obviously it's a little bit big, so let's go ahead and size it down a little bit, maybe something like around there, and let's put it off to the side, maybe over here. All right, so now that we have our product done, we have our product in the scene, we have two different products that we can dissolve between the two. You'll notice that it's already set up here, just dissolves between the two different products. We do need some reflections, so let's go ahead and add those reflections. And those reflections are really easy to do, actually. And the way that we're going to do them is by using a mirror node. So I'm going to hit Shift Space. I'm going to type in mirror. I'm going to use the mirrors. Click Enter. I'm going to take out of this transform node. I'm just going to drive it right into the mirror node. And now you can see that we've mirrored it. This isn't necessarily, we don't want to leave it like this. So let's go ahead and maybe spin it so it's 90 degrees. You can come over here into angle and just type in 90. And then now we need to bring this down to where we actually want the reflection to be. So let's bring it over here. We can either take this mirrors and we can drive it right into the transform and then we can merge it in. But what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to merge it in its own little location along the pipeline here. And the reason I'm going to merge it like that is so that I can control the blend. And it's only going to control the blend of the actual bottle. Now we can see this is a little bit too far away. So let's go back into the mirrors and let's just bring it up just a little bit. Something like that. That looks good. Looks like it's sitting right on top of that. And this is the piece of glass that we're looking at. All right, so there we go. We have our dissolve done. We could also blur this and we can mask it so it only blurs the small portion that we want, but I think it looks pretty good the way that it is. Let's go ahead and as we play with this dissolve, you'll notice that the actual reflection changes to match the specific bottle that it is. So that's what we want. That looks pretty good. That reflection might be a bit much. Let's go ahead and come back into the merge, and I'm just going to blend this down just a little bit. All right, so now we have our reflection, we have our items on here, we have our product photography, we have our people. We're just missing some text, so let's go ahead and add a little bit of text in here. Let's go ahead and just bring in a text node, and I'm going to take this text node and I'm going to drop it directly onto my project. And the text can really say whatever you want. I'm going to go ahead and make it in black for right now, and I'm going to use the Azo Sans. So let me go down here, find Azo Sans. I'm going to start off in black. One thing I see a lot in some of the Instagrams is, you know, the promo code. So let's go ahead and use promo code CB10. All right, and let's see where it is. Okay, so right there. Maybe it could be a little bit bigger. Or actually, let's get rid of use just so we can make this a little bit larger. I mean, that's kind of what this all comes down to is you're always going to want to give a little bit of room on the bottom here because it's usually where they put that shop now icon or that little bar where you're actually going to click on. So give it a little bit of space on the bottom. It's fine if this gets covered up because that's not a integral part of the actual product photography. It's just a reflection that helps sell it. So let's go ahead and I'm going to Command C, Command V, or Control. And I'm going to change this to maybe 10% off first order. And instead of black, let's go to light. And let's drop this down a little bit. And I also want to size it down a little, maybe something like that. So promo code CB10 for 10% off through first order. And just so you know, this is not a real advertisement. I don't know any of these companies, and you will not get 10% off of any of these bottles of wine by using this code. All right, so now we have our text. There's another thing I'd like to do. I'd like to just put maybe some kind of watermark or some kind of logo or something. I happen to have one here. I'm not sure whose it is. I just grabbed it off of Pixabay. Let's go ahead and take this. We'll drop it onto our comp, see what it looks like. All right, so we have this, we already have this image here. It is just a PNG. It's in black. If I wanted to change the color, all I got to do is I can drive this directly into a background node, and then let's change this color to maybe like red or something. And then here you can change it. Now, that may not work with all images, obviously. This one is a PNG, so it already cuts things out. If it doesn't, you can always use a bitmap node. And to do that, let me show you how to do that real quick. Let's say this is just a regular PNG and it's on a white background or on a black background or any color really. Just shift space. Let's go ahead and bring out a bitmap node, and I'm going to take this and I'm going to drive it into the bitmap node, and then we're going to use the bitmap node on alpha, or you're going to change it to luminance. So obviously if it's on luminance, this doesn't really work for us because it's black on black. We can also use alpha if it does have an alpha, but then again, if it already has an alpha, then you don't need to do this anyways. So you can just use luminance or chrominance, and you can actually use that color to create a mask, and then that can go into a background. So let's say we want to plug this into this black background. Now it's black. Obviously, if it was red, it would be red or yellow or vice versa. Let's go ahead and this time let's just make it blue. Maybe we'll add a little bit of color to it, maybe something like that. Let's see what that looks like, and we'll merge this back onto our image, and let's take this media out, plug it in. Maybe that's a little too close to the colors, so let's just, I don't know, change it up a little bit. All right, so we're going to need to obviously resize this because this is going to be too big, obviously. So let's come over here to the background, shift space, type in XF to bring up the transform node. And then, of course, like all the others, the transform node, this is the one we're actually going to resize. Let's say we want to put it over here, maybe. Maybe that's a little bit big. Make it a little bit smaller. Something like that. We could also have some kind of wording behind it. You can do pretty much whatever you want. So right now we're pretty much done. The only thing we've been missing is, let's say we want to swap in between these two different bottles, and it's really easy to do actually. We already created the dissolve. Now we just have to animate this dissolve. So let's say that right around the 1 second mark, or maybe even the 2 second mark, we want to have it go ahead and change from one bottle to the next. Let's say if you were doing this in 30 frames per second, so you would go to maybe frame 60, and you would go ahead and drop down a keyframe and then go one more frame using your over arrow, your right arrow, and now you're going to go ahead and change it to the background, and now you're just going to leave it. If you want it to change back to the other one, then you could go say to frame, say 120, and go ahead and drop down another keyframe. Oh God. Drop down another keyframe, move over one, and then take your background and slide it back over. And so now you'll see that at some point it just flops over. Now if you want it to take a little bit longer to actually switch over, like you want it to kind of ease into it, all you got to do is go ahead and undo this, maybe go a few frames forward so it actually kind of blends into it, and then like so. And so now it'll just have a little bit smoother of a transition. All right, that's pretty much it. So as you come back here, again, you can play with the sizing. You can play with pretty much everything you need to. All you have to do is render this out. I'll show you how to do that here real quick. Now here you can see we have our ad. It's pretty much done. Has a neat little transition between the two bottles. You can have it keep switching back and forth. What do these bottles have to do with these people scuba diving? Absolutely nothing, but just trying to illustrate a point here. All right, so now we're done. Let's go ahead and just delete this other one that we did earlier, and now let's just go ahead and render this out. To render it out, let's go over here to the rendering tab, the output rendering tab. We're going to leave it on custom because, again, remember we made it for 1080 by 1080. Let's come down here. We're going to make sure in the resolution that it is, in fact, 1080 by 1080, which it is in our case. So let's go ahead and just title this. We'll call this Test Insta. We're going to add that to the render queue. I'm just going to put it on my desktop for now. I'm going to hit save and render all. It's going to take a couple minutes. Again, it's not a very long clip. It shouldn't take very long. You can see it's already done. Here we go. Test Insta movie. And there we go. All we have to do is upload that over onto Instagram or wherever else we want to put it, and we've got our ad done. All right, guys, that's it for me. If you guys have any questions, please leave it down in the comments. If you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe, hit that bell notification, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks.